Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Mr. S with the Chess with Mr. S School, and this is 10-Minute Chess with Mr. S. Before we get started, I wanted to make a quick introductory video and let you know a little bit about myself so that you have some idea of who it is that's going to be teaching you. Well, my name is Mr. S and I've been teaching chess for about 20 years or so, and about every single day for the last 10 years or so. I've enjoyed every single moment of it, and at the encouragement of our students and our parents, decided to finally start my own YouTube channel. Before we get started in any kind of openings, attacks, strategies, or any deeper stuff, I thought maybe it might be a good idea to go over the very basics for anyone out there that wants to tag along and enjoy learning chess, but doesn't really quite know how to move the pieces. So before we get into any kind of serious stuff, let's get into some basic stuff. First and foremost, let's go over our chessboard. Alright, let's take a moment and familiarize ourselves with our chessboard, which I also like to call our chess world. In our chess world, we have 64 squares, and each square has a letter and a number attached to it. The letters are called files. They go up and down. The numbers are called ranks. They go across like this. This square would be called A1. This square would be called B1. What would this square be called? That's right, C1. And this square, E1. And what about this square over here? Well, this square would be called F, because it's on the F file, 4, because it's on the 4th rank. What would this square be called? That's right, H8, because it's on the H file and the 8th rank. By doing this, we're able to write down our moves and also in the future play blindfold chess, which hopefully many of you will be able to do by the time this series is over. Today we're going to go over our pieces as well, so let's familiarize ourselves with our pieces. These guys over here are called pawns. We get 8 of them. And pawns have the power to go forward march, 1 step, or super jump, 2 steps. 1 step or super jump, 2 steps. Mini jump, super jump, mini jump, super jump. And of course, I like to have a little fun with this. Now, pawns have the power to go forward, never backward, and they capture differently than they move, diagonally. Sort of like checkers pieces, only they don't hop over anything. Now let's see what happens when these pawns meet their opponents. Okay, now that we have our board set up with our pawns, let's take a quick moment and see how they actually move in combat. Pawns can go 1 space up or super jump, mini jump or super jump. When pawns start on their home squares, they're allowed to go 2 spaces up, but only from their home squares. A common question is, if I go only mini jump over here, can I do a super jump later and save it? No, unfortunately you can't save your super jump. You can only do a super jump from your home squares, from your starting squares. A2, B2, C2, D2, E2, F2, G2, H2. And black can also do that only from his or her home squares. Very good. Now white says, hi-ya, super jump. And black wants to copy this move, so he plays pawn E5. This is E5 because it's on the E file and the 5th rank. Now white says, super jump again, pawn D4. It's black's turn, so what to do? Black can capture. But remember, this is not checkers. You can't jump the pawn over here and then jump it again and then remove these 2 pawns and say, I got you. That doesn't work. In chess, we have to land on the square and capture it. So pawn takes pawn, like this. Very good. Now it's white's turn, and white pushes the pawn up, and black can capture again, diagonally only. We move forward, but we capture diagonally. So the pawn captures. It's white's turn now, and white captures back with the B pawn and takes on C3. C3. Very good. Pawns can never go backward, only capture diagonally, and when they go to the very end, they can transform into a queen, rook, knight, or bishop. But you can't leave it as a pawn, and you can't grab another king. That would be too hard to finish the game with 2 kings on the board. Now let's go to our next piece, the rook. All right, moving on to the rooks. you get 2 rooks, not rocks or castles, as many people like to call them, but rooks. The rooks are very simple. They move up, down, side to side, up, down, side to side. The rooks move up, down, side to side, up, down, side to side, in a big plus shape. And the cool thing about the rooks is that although they look big and clunky, they're super fast. You can go 1 square up or 5 squares down. You can go 1 square across or 3 squares across. It's your choice. You're the boss of all of your pieces. They're your little minions, and you're in charge. You could tell them what to do. Now let's move on to my next favorite piece, the bishops. All right, now we're moving on to the bishops, the razor-sharp bows and arrows of the chess game. Now, the bishops are very cool pieces and lightning fast. The bishops can go diagonally on their own color. So the bishops are a lot of fun, but they miss about half of the chessboard. For example, this bishop can only fly on the light-colored squares, while the other bishop can only fly on the dark-colored squares, which means that they can only land on all of the squares if they work together. Bishop pairs, or bishops working together, are very strong. In our school, we value the bishops a little bit higher than most places, and we give this bishop a value of $3.25. This bishop can make it to this square no problem. It'll take it 2 turns by going on G2 first, and then on the next turn, flying all the way over to the A8 square. But this bishop, no matter how fast it is, can never ever land on a dark square like A1. This makes the bishop a little bit weaker in comparison to something like a rook. But it's still a very strong piece, and it can still move very, very fast. Use your bishops wisely. Now we're going to move on to our queens and kings. Okay, now it's time to take a look at our most powerful and important piece of the game. I'm talking about Her Royal Majesty the Queen and His Lazy Royal Majesty the King. The King and the Queen are the most powerful and most important pieces in the game. The King can always be told apart from the Queen because the King always has a big plus on his head. So the King would be this one over here. We're going to fire the King for a quick moment and get back to him in a second. You're fired. Okay, perfect. Now we have just the Queen left. Now the Queen goes up, down, side to side, or X marks the spot, just like a bishop and a rook would. Now the Queen is worth $9, and the rook is worth $5, and the bishop is worth $3.25, so that should make $8.25. So why do we call the Queen a $9 piece? Well, that's because it can move like a dark squared bishop all the way down to A1. Or it can move like a rook all the way up to A8. Or it can move like a light squared bishop to E4. Or it can move like a rook to E5. Or again, like a dark squared bishop to H8. My point is that the Queen can go like a dark squared bishop, a light squared bishop, or a rook. So we add an extra little value for that, and we give the Queen a $9 valuation. Now let's get rid of this Queen. You're fired. And let's add the King. His Royal Majesty, the King. Now the King can always be told apart from the Queen because he has a big plus on his head. And because he has this big crown on top of his head full of gold and jewels and diamonds, it weighs him down. And the King can only go 1 up, or 1 down, or 1 across, or 1 the other way, or 1 diagonally, like this, or like this, or like this, or like that. So the King goes 1 space in every direction, and it goes the same way as the Queen, but only 1 space. It goes up, down, side to side, or X marks the spot, but only 1 space. And the Queen can do the same thing, but as much as she wants. And the real trick is it's actually as much as you want, because you're the boss. You're the emperor or empress of all of these little minions, including the King. Now we're missing just 1 other piece, so let's introduce the Knight. All right, now we're moving on to one of my favorite pieces, the Knight. The Knight, not the horsey, pony, unicorn, or donkey. Please don't ever call him that. The Knight can go in big L shapes, and it always jumps from 1 square to another square, and it can even jump right back, no problem. The knight in the middle can go to 8 different squares. Let's count them. Regular L, backward L, upside down L, backward upside down L, sideways L, upside down sideways L, other sideways L, another upside down sideways L. So the knight in the middle of the board can go to 8 different locations, kind of like an octopus with 8 different tentacles. The more your knight is toward the middle, the more damage the knight can do, the more it can attack. If you place this knight on A1, it can attack 2 squares, B3 and C2. If you slide the knight just a little bit further toward the middle on B1, it can automatically attack 3 squares. Now if we take the knight even further on C1, do you see how many squares it can attack? You got it, 4 squares, like this. The knight, the more you bring it toward the middle, the stronger it becomes. This is why we always try to get our knights toward the E4, E5, D4, D5 squares. But anything around here will also do. One of the places we don't like to put the knight is on the rims of the chessboard. We have a saying for that. A knight on the rim is very grim. A knight on the rim is very grim. Because even on C1, where it attacks 4 different squares, the knight is not fully realizing its potential. That means if we put the knight on a different square, like say E5, the knight can automatically attack 8 different squares. So we always find more power with the knight in the middle. Now we're going to put all of our pieces together and set up our board. So let's start with our pawns. Our pawns go on the 2nd rank for white and 7th rank for black. Let's place our pawns. We have Albert, Bob, Charlie, Derek, Eric, Freddie, Gilbert, and Henry. Then we have our rooks that always go in the corners. 1 rook here and 1 rook here. Now we also have our king and queen, but I always forget how to put them. So there's a little friendly reminder of how to place our queens. Should I place the queen here on E1 or should I put the queen on D1? Well, the easiest way to remember isn't by letters, it's instead by the color of the queen. The queen is a white queen, so it goes on a white square. The king goes next to the queen because they're married. And the bishops have big mouths. Whoops, those are the knights. Let's put the bishops on. The bishops have big mouths. Do you see those bishops? Now on your regular chessboard, you'll see that there's a little indentation for the bishops. And that's because the bishops love to whisper to the king's and the queen's ears. Your Majesty, I have news for you. And then this bishop says, Your Majesty, I have other news for you. So the bishops always whisper to the king and the queen's ears. And the knights, not the horses, ponies, unicorns, or donkeys, please don't ever call them that, go right in between the rooks and the bishops. So the same thing now for black. We have Albert, Bob, Charlie, Derek, Eric, Freddie, Gilbert, and Henry. And then we have our rooks that go in the corners. Excellent. I always remember those. Then I have the kings and the queens. And again, I kind of forgot. Where should I put the kings? Where should I put the queen? And the easiest way to remember is not by letter, but instead by the color of the queen. Put the dark queen on the dark square. Put the king next to the queen because they're married. And then have the bishops whisper to the king and the queen's ears. Your Majesty, I have news for you. Your Majesty, I have better news for you. And then we hop the knights on the in between the rooks and the bishops. And that's how we set up our chessboard. Now in our future episode, we're going to go over how to check, how to checkmate, how to castle, and all sorts of cool stuff. So I hope you guys join us again. I want to thank you all very much for joining us for today's lecture. Please say hi to your moms and dads. Be good to your brothers and sisters and everyone else at your house. We'll see you all next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching today's video. If you liked the video, please share with your friends and family, and please remember to hit that like and subscribe button as it really helps the channel. Until next time, please remember to practice and have fun.